In order to check to make sure that we've got the camera set up properly, we have the camera right now, it's set up. I have the lens propped open. Right now I have a piece of paper taped around the helical, around the part that moves on the helical. And I know where I'm going to measure from. I have this there's a little ridge across the top of the lens cone, and that's where I'm going to measure from. And I have the lens propped open, or set to bulb. Actually, it's set to time, if you really want to get down to it. And it is wide open. In this case, this is a 4.5, f4.5 lens. It's wide open to 4.5. Now, I have it facing out the window and at a long distance view. So it is out the window at a long distance view. And what I'm going to do is check to make sure that I have what we call infinity focus. In order to determine infinity focus, I have this little piece of plexiglass, and that little piece of plexiglass is frosted on one side. You can also use tape, and I will actually tape this up to show you how you can use some tape. But what I want to do is I want to focus back and forth, and I'm just holding that down, focusing back and forth, just to the point where I am sure that the distant objects, in this case those trees back there, are in as sharp focus as I can get it. And as it happens, I've actually built this setup before, so I have my lens cone exactly the right length, so that when the lens cone is attached to the camera and the helical and lens are attached to the lens cone, I will get that perfect distance. We call that the flange focal distance. Now, if you have found that you cannot, even when you have turned your lens so that it is at the stop where, as you notice, as I turn this helical, the lens gets farther from the film plane. If you're all the way back as far as you can go, and the lens, the lens is as close to the film plane as you can get it, and it still will not go to the infinity focus that's farthest out, then you have a problem and this lens cone is too long. One of the things that I've done is I have created a lens cone for every millimeter in length from, I think it's about 58 millimeters to, for a 58 millimeter lens, I forget exactly how long that first one is, where it's essentially the lens sits right here, all the way out to 180 millimeters, and that goes from the film plane back here, all the way out to the flange focal, the flange of the lens, which is where the lens meets the helical right there. That's 180 millimeters. So there are something like 130 different lens cones you can use. If you have used one and you found that it is too long, print one that is 2 millimeters shorter, because I have a couple of devices that you can use to shim it outward. So you want it to be a little bit shorter. It's a little bit better if the lens cone is shorter. If it's too long, you'll never get to infinity focus. But these are two different thicknesses, and these go between the lens and the lens body, okay, or between the lens and the camera body. And that will shim it out just a little bit further. If you need anything further out, I also have this ring, and this ring sits between the helical and the lens cone. So with these two devices, you can get an extra millimeter in length. So if you print one If your first one is too long, then you can print one that is too shorter, and you can use these shimming techniques and end up with a with the proper focus. So right now I'm I'm directly right on where I need to be for this particular lens and this particular setup. So now I'm going to calibrate it using a rangefinder, an external rangefinder. Now, you can do this a couple of different ways. I'm going to show it using a rangefinder, but I'll also talk about a couple of different ways. Okay, I am in the same room, and I have turned off the lights so that I can see what's on the ground glass very well. And what I'm using as a target is the door. Okay, in fact, where I'm using the target is the window that is on the door, and I have this set up. So I just need to turn my camera just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is, with the rangefinder, I'm going to find the proper distance. Okay, I'll turn that rangefinder, I'll look through there, I'll figure out what the range is. I'm going to find the proper distance, and I might need to move the camera a little bit forward, a little bit back. This happens to be in feet. You could use meters, you could use whatever units you want. And when you're a certain distance away, you'll move the camera to that distance. In this case, it would be 10 feet. I would move the camera until it's 10 feet away. I would focus on that high contrast area, the light and where the light's coming through that door. And then as I change, as I get to that point, the focal point, I'll focus this until it's right in focus. And then on top of this piece of paper, I'll just write a number. So I will write the number that is on the rangefinder. Now this rangefinder, it's a Prezia rangefinder, which I think it was a German rangefinder from the 1930s or something like that. It does have an adjustment screw in the center, and I do have a laser rangefinder that I use to calibrate this. But the big thing is, if this is off by a little bit, it doesn't matter, because what you're going to do is whenever, as long as it's consistent, if you focus to 10 feet on here and you're actually 9 feet away, it doesn't matter, because you're going to then calibrate the lens to what this says. Okay, so you're going to calibrate the lens to what the rangefinder itself says. And I usually do it for everything that's marked on a particular lens. Now, I also know, I've tested this, and I have a little note on top of this, and that says accurate 15 feet and below. Okay, so if I'm above 15 feet, I just kind of zone focus. There's not going to be a huge difference unless I'm right at 4.5 on this lens. If I'm stopped down to f16, f22, f32, this goes to f45, I really don't need to be that tight on the focus. But the big thing is, I'm calibrating my marks on this piece of paper around the ring of this lens to the rangefinder that's on the lens. Now, if I swap out for a different rangefinder, I need to do the calibration again, because the rangefinder may register differently. So now, if that works, or this system works pretty well, this is the system I use. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't like a rangefinder on top of their camera, go ahead, just take that off, and instead what you're going to do is you're going to do what you do for, say, zone focusing. So you'll look at the wall, you're going to say, I judge that wall to be, okay, so from where I'm sitting, or I judge that door to be 5 meters away. Actually, I think it's between 5 and 6 meters away. This is my idea of how far the door is, and I'm always going to judge that distance the same, 5 to 6 meters. And then I'm going to go to where I think 3 meters is, and I'll focus this, and then I'll mark that. And then I'm going to go to where 1 meter is, and I'll focus this and focus on the lens, and then I'll mark it. And then that's my consistent eye. I could be off by 20%, but as long as my eye is consistent, then I will always get a consistent focus. So that's the big key on this, is whatever system you're going to use is the system that you're going to end up with. And that system, as long as it's consistent, will always give you good focus. Okay, one of the most unfortunate parts is that I don't think this is going to come through on video really well. I think the contrast is an issue here. Okay, so you can see my marks that I make on the lens. And this is just the first set of marks that I'll do. And what I'll do is I'll shoot it. I'll check it, I'll shoot it, and then I will go ahead and I usually like making little triangles out of paper and gluing them down at the location, and in the triangle I put the distance. That's the way I like to do it. And so it's not a full ring, it's just these little triangles of paper. But if this works for you, I think that this is good. This camera in particular, this lens in particular goes from infinity down to about 1 meter, about 3 feet, and this is a meter that is calibrated in feet. And yeah, so it goes down to 3 feet. That's 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet. 7, 8, 10, 15, 20, and then infinity on this. So that's the way you set up your, that's the way you do your focusing. That's the way you set up your focusing. Now, one of the things that I'm going to give you some advice on is set up your focus, shoot one roll, develop it, and check it before you shoot your second roll. You may be wrong, you may be off. Go through the process again,